When our story begins, Alice has already been through so very many curious adventures.
Curious, sir, and...
Can you hit record on the GoPro?
Oh, sure. Where is that? Right here?
It's right there. It's right
Oh, there it is. Now what do I do?
top button.
Just hit it?
Hit it. Try not to move the camera. Okay.
There's a red thing.
They say your father was a great man. You must be what's left. They say your father was a great man. You must be what's left.
When our story begins, Alice has already been through so very many curious adventures.
Curious, sir, and curious, sir.
Ever since she suddenly found herself falling helplessly down a very deep rabbit hole into a strange world.
Dear, dear, how queer everything is today.
A world filled with the most eccentric creatures. A singing white rabbit with a waistcoat pocket watch.
How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claws, and welcomes little fishies in with gently smiling jaws.
A nasty-tempered old duchess who shook her baby so violently it turned into a pig? A hookah-smoking caterpillar who demanded to know of Alice.
Who are you?
I hardly know, sir. Just as present, at least I know who I was when I got up this morning. But I think I must have been changed several times since then.
What do you mean by that? Explain yourself.
I can't explain myself. I'm afraid, sir, because I'm not myself. You see?
I don't see.
I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly, for I can't understand it myself to begin with. And being so many different sizes in a day is very confusing.
It isn't.
Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet, but when you have to turn into a chrysalis, you will someday. You know, and then after that, into a butterfly. I should think you'd feel a little queer, won't you?
Not a bit.
Well, perhaps your feelings may be different. All I know is it would feel very queer to me.
You? Who are you?
I think you'd ought to tell me who you are first.
Why?
Here was another puzzling question. And as Alice could not think of any good reason, and as the caterpillar seemed to be in a very unpleasant state of mind, she turned away.
Come back. I have something important to say.
Yes? Well,
Keep your temper.
is that all?
No. So, you think you're changed, do you?
I'm afraid I am, sir. I can't remember things I used, and I can't keep the same size for 10 minutes together.
Can't remember what things?
Well, I've tried to say, how doth the little buzzy bee, but it all came different.
Recite, you are old Father William. You are old Father William.
You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white, and yet you insistently stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right?
In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it may injure the brain, but now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again.
You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the break. Pray, how did you manage to do it?
In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life.
You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and you have grown, most uncommonly fat.
That is not said right.
Not quite right, I'm afraid. Some words have got altered.
It is wrong from beginning to end. What size do you want to be?
Oh, I'm not particular to size, only one that doesn't like changing so often, you know?
I don't know. Are you content now?
Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir. If you wouldn't mind, 3 inches is such a wretched height to be.
It is a very good height indeed.
But I am not used to it.
You'll get used to it in time.
Alice left the caterpillar, confused as ever, wondering what could possibly happen next. Alice now found herself walking through a wood, when she was startled by seeing the Cheshire Cat sitting on the bough of a tree a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it saw Alice. It looked good-natured, she thought. Still, it had very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt it ought to be treated with respect.
Cheshire Puss? Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
That depends a good deal on where you want to get to.
I don't much care where.
Then it doesn't matter which way you go.
So long as I get somewhere.
Oh, you're sure to do that if you only walk long enough.
Alice felt this could not be denied, so she tried another question.
What sort of people live about here?
In that direction lives a hatter, and in that direction lives a March hare. Visit either you like. They're both mad.
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad.
How do you know I'm mad?
Well, you must be, or you wouldn't have come here.
Alice didn't think that proved it at all. However, she went on.
And how do you know that you're mad?
You begin with, a dog's not mad. You grant that?
I suppose so.
Well then, you see, a dog growls when it's angry and wags its tail when it's pleased. Now I growl when I'm pleased and wag my tail when I'm angry. Therefore, I'm mad.
With that, the cat vanished quite slowly, beginning with the end of the tail and ending with a grin, which remained some time after the rest of it had gone.
Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, but a grin without a cat? It's the most curious thing I've ever saw in my life.
Alice waited a little, half expecting to see it again, but it did not appear, and after a minute or two, she walked on in the direction in which the March hare was said to live.
I've seen hatters before. The March hare will be much the most interesting, and perhaps, as this is May, it won't be raving mad, at least not so mad as it was in March.
She had not gone much further before she came in sight of the house of the March hare. She thought it must be the right house because the chimneys were shaped like ears and the roof was thatched with fur. It was quite large and formidable as she walked up towards it, rather timidly, saying to herself,
I suppose it shouldn't be raving mad after all. I almost wish I'd gone to see the hatter instead.
There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March hare and the hatter were having tea at it.
The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all its might, and he did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright.
Excuse me.
The sea was as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky.
No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly.
Please.
No room.
There's plenty of room.
Have some wine.
I don't see any wine.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it.
It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited.
I didn't know it was your table. It's laid for a great many more than 4.
No room, no room.
Your hair wants cutting.
You should learn not to make personal remarks. It's very rude.
Why is a raven like a writing desk?
Come, we shall have some fun now. I'm glad we've been asking riddles. I believe I can guess that.
Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?
Exactly so.
Then you should say what you mean.
I do. At least, I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know?
Not the same thing a bit. You might as well just say I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see.
You might just as well say that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like.
You might as well say that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe.
It is the same with you. What day of the month is it?
The Hatter had taken his watch out of his pocket and was looking at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then, and holding it to his ear. Alice considered a little and then said,
The 4th?
2 days wrong. I told you butter wouldn't suit the works.
It was the best butter.
Yes, but some crumbs must have got in it as well. You shouldn't have put it with the bread knife.
The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. And then he dipped it into his cup of tea and looked at it again. But he could think of nothing better to say than his first remark.
It was the best butter, you know.
Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity.
What a funny watch. It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is.
Why should it? Does your clock tell you what year it is?
Of course not. But that's because it's the same year for such a long time together.
Which is just the case with mine.
Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The Hatter's remark seemed to have no sort of meaning in it, and yet it was certainly English.
I don't quite understand you.
The dormouse is asleep again,
Said the Hatter, and he poured a little hot tea upon its nose.
Of course, just what I was going to remark myself.
Have you guessed the riddle yet?
No, I give it up. What's the answer?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Nor I.
I think you might do something better with the time than waste it in asking riddles that have no answers.
Oh, if you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't be talking about wasting it. It's him.
I don't know what you mean.
Of course you don't. I dare say you've never even spoke to time.
Perhaps not, but I know I have to beat time when I learn music.
Ah, that accounts for it. He won't stand a beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, he'd do almost anything you like with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and the ground goes the clock in a twinkling, 1:30. Time for dinner.
I only wish it was.
That would would be grand, certainly. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know?
And not at first, perhaps, but you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked.
Is that the way you manage?
Not I. We quarreled last March, just before the hair went mad. You know, it was at the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts. I had to sing. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wondered where you're at. You know the song, perhaps.
I've heard something like that.
It goes on, in this way. Up above the world you fly, like a teacher in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle.
Here, the dormouse shook itself and began singing in its sleep,
Twinkle, 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 twinkle.
and went on for so long they had to pinch it to make it stop.
Well, I had hardly finished the first verse when the queen jumped out and bawled out, "He's murdering the time off with his head!"
How dreadfully savage.
And ever since then, you won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now.
A bright idea came into Alice's head.
Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here?
Yes, that's it. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles.
Then you keep moving around, I suppose?
Exactly so, as the things get used up.
But what happens when you come to the beginning again?
Suppose we change the subject. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story.
I'm afraid I don't know one.
The dormouse shall.
Wake up, dormouse!
And they pinched it on both sides at once. Squeak! The dormouse slowly opened his eyes.
I wasn't asleep. I heard every word you fellows were saying.
Tell us a story.
Yes, please do.
Oh, and make it quick about it, or you'll be asleep again before it's done.
Once upon a time, there was 3 little sisters, and their names were Elsie, Lacey, and Tilly, and they lived in the bottom of a well.
What did they live on?
They lived on pudding.
They couldn't have done that, you know? They'd been very ill.
So they were very, very ill.
Alice tried to fancy herself what an extraordinary way of living would be like, but it puzzled her too much.
But why did they live on the bottom of a well?
Take some more tea.
I've had nothing yet, so I can't take more.
Oh, you mean you can't take less? It is very easy to take more than nothing.
Nobody asked your opinion.
Who's making personal remarks now?
Alice did not quite know what to say to this, so she helped herself to some tea and bread and butter and then turned to the dormouse and repeated her question.
Why did they live on the bottom of a well?
The dormouse, again, took a minute or two to think about it.
It was a pudding well.
There is no such thing.
If you can't be civil, you'd better finish the story yourself.
No, please go on. I won't interrupt again. I dare say there may be one.
One indeed. And so these 3 little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know?
What did they draw?
Pudding!
I want a clean cup. Let's all move one place on.
He moved on as he spoke, and the dormouse followed him, and the March Hare moved into the dormouse's place, and Alice, rather unwillingly, took the place of the March Hare. The Hatter was the only one who got any advantage from the change, and Alice was a good deal worse off than before, as the March Hare had just upset the milk jug onto his plate. Alice did not wish to offend the dormouse again, so she began very cautiously.
But I don't understand. Where did they draw the trickle from?
You can draw water out of a water well. So, I think you could draw trickle out of a trickle well. Stupid!
they were in the well.
Of course they were. Well in.
This answer so confused poor Alice that she let the dormouse go on for some time without interrupting it.
They were learning to draw, and they drew all matters of things. Everything that begins with an M.
Why with an M?
Why not?
Alice was silent. Woo! By the way, the dormouse had closed his eyes by this time and was going off into a doze. But on being pinched by the Hatter, it woke up again with a little shriek and went on.
That begins with an M, such as mouse traps and the moon and memory. And munchness, you know you say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see much a thing as a drawing of a muchness?
Really? Now you ask me? I don't think...
Then you shouldn't talk.
This piece of rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up in great disgust and walked off. The dormouse fell asleep instantly, and neither of the others took the least notice of her going, though she looked back once or twice, half hoping they would call after her. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the dormouse into the teapot.
At any rate, I'll never go there again.
Said Alice as she picked her way through the wood.
That's the stupidest tea party I've ever was at in all my life.
Just as she said this, she noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it.
That's very curious. But everything's curious today. I think I may as well go in at once.
And in she went.